So good morning. This is Sherry Evans from HRM Plus. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. Today we're going to be taking a look in the Employee Records System at the Management Employee Utilities Tools. And on Open, you're going to see several tabs across here that represent the variety of tools we have available for you. Now, I also sent out by email to all of you attending the documentation for this, each of the different utility tools, starting with the Recalculate. So we'll be using this documentation as a guide today to walk through what we're doing. And I will make this zoom up a little bit for you so you can see that a little bit better. And again, we thank you for being on board. We will record this webinar and send you the link when finished. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move those instructions on over to the other screen, and I'll follow along that here in the system. And I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for you as well. So when you log into the system, just a reminder, Management Resources, you're going to have all the documents that we've been sending you in your resource page. This is our sample resource page, so you'll have all the documents. And you'll also have a link that has a recording of all the training webinars here. So feel free to use those resources at any time. So it's nice to be able to look at this recording of training webinars because it takes you to a page that shows all the webinars we've done and links to those, so you can click on that and listen to the webinar again if you'd like to. And then you have all the instructions for each of the items here for you. So we're going to go ahead and go into Management Utilities and start going down these tabs to show you what is available in this system for you to do. And the first one you come into that auto opens is the Recalc totals or Recalculate totals. And one of the first things that you'll see when you come into a lot of the screens are these buttons for calculated or non-calculated. And I've referred to these in the past, but calculated means you want to affect records where the salary is calculated based on things like education, degree, education, credits, and experience. So typically your certificated staff, whereas the non-calculated are your hourly rate people where you pick a step on the salary schedule. So that's just the two groups that our system uses. And from there, then you can select what employee types you want to do, whichever the activities you're involved with. So these will reflect whatever you have set up in your system as your employee or interest types from the job system to carry over to the employee system either way. And just a little note, as you're doing certain things, especially like recalculating, if you're a district that has like 800 certificated employees and includes classroom teachers and cert specialists, sometimes it's better to do the calculation just on classroom teacher and then do the certificated specialist at a later date. So so there's a note in the documentation about that to make sure that you're, what you're doing, because you're coming across the internet, it does take time to do those things. So now, another thing to consider before you do many of these utility tools, and certainly in the Recalc, you're going to have options to recalculate like their total credits, their total experience, their placement on salary schedules, update P codes. In other words, you're going to affect records that determine salary amounts. And so what you can do is you go to System Manager, Export Information, and there are a couple of reports there you can choose. It's up to you which one you feel more comfortable with. But you can export this data prior to actually doing the Recalc. So I could use the salary info or the work area detail. Those are usually the sets that you would choose to use. So kind of get used to the one that you want. The work area detail or the work area detail with assignments if you keep assignments and account codes. And some of you have customized salary budget exhibit reports. So whatever you use, pick that and export it out to Excel prior to actually doing the recalculation. Then when you're done with the Recalc, you can come back and export again. And I'm going to bring this over here, the documentation, because I've shown you something that I showed somebody else recently, and they're going, I didn't know that. And so we'll just share it here with you. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I want to get this over here and zoom this up a little bit for you. So what I do is I export out the report before I do anything, and it exports out with a lot of fields, but basically this is a sample of a certificated. So I just deleted all the columns I didn't want because all I really needed was the user ID, their name, and their placement, because I want to know if after I do the recalculate, is that placement going to be different? So these first columns represent what I had in my Excel file before, data before the change. Then I do the recalculate, go out and grab the export file again, and I copy and paste into new columns those same 3 columns, user ID, display name, placement. And then I add one field to that Excel file that I call match. You can call it what you want to, and I insert a formula. And the formula for the match is this: equals exact, and then compare your 2 cells. So equal exact, open paren, first cell, comma, second cell, close paren. When you use that formula and copy it down, the system will look at C3 and compare it to F3 and say, is it true or false? So if it's false, it means that the placement prior to and the placement after do not match. That would mean, based on a recalc, they changed. So in this case, the person was at MA90 Step 8, and they went to MA90 Step 9. This is a cool thing to do when you're setting up a new year and you've posted experience. You want to double-check things, or you've added a lot of credits, and you want to just do a double-check of who changed before and after. So you can do this little equals exact formula, and then you know of your records, 3 people changed and the others did not. So just so you have that information. But I've been asked that a lot, so I thought it would help you to see that. So now let's go ahead and talk about the process for recalculating, and then we'll stop at the end of this and certainly leave time for questions on the Recalc tool. So back we go to our utility screen and the Recalc. So let's just assume that we're going to be recalculating credits. We've done a new work area, we've done a lot of changes, or you did a new salary schedule, whatever you want to do. Basically, what you're going to do is pick your type. So I would just pick teacher. And then you're going to select your cutoff or the year, your work area year, so you'll need to know that. Now in Washington, currently the cutoff is October 1, and that's set up in your work area table. So you would select whatever the year is, and then you're going to select the process. That's as simple as this screen is. Calculated or non-calculated, employee type, cutoff, and what process do you want? So let's just talk about these different process types and what they do. Update certificated credits does exactly that. It'll update their credits, academic since the BA, in-service since the BA, non-degree, total, all of that stuff. It'll recalculate all their credit totals. Other credits would go with your classified staff, where some of you do maintain credits for paraeducators. And some of you may be doing a lot more of that if the state board gets the funding for the para certification, which is expected to come this year. So that's other credits. Cumulative FTE. So for classified staff, we don't track a cum FTE because they just go by step. The cum FTE would apply more to the certificated staff. So update cum FTE. If you've rolled experience and you want to update the cum FTE so that it's all current and correct, you would run this process. Update placement would typically be done either after you've updated credits or experience, or you've done some type of a new salary schedule configuration. Then you can update placement, and again, that goes with your calculated staff because that's how they place on the salary schedule, and you can go ahead and go through that. So you can use that tool. Update salary can apply to all employee types. It basically just takes the data that you have stored in the work area record, goes through and looks at the salary schedule step you have in that table, and updates that salary amount. So if you've had your work areas all established, and then you went in and modified your salary schedules to reflect a salary increase, you could just use this update salary, and it'll go through and just mass update all records. And then the last one here is update P code. So let me describe to you what that is, and then I'll get into the table and show you some stuff with that, or into the document. So for every salary schedule step in the salary schedule table, we have a field we call P code or placement code, P code on the salary schedule. It's just a code that represents that step on the salary schedule. Back in the days of EDRM, when you worked with classified staff and you created a new year, for example, for classified staff, you had to go through every single record and move them from step 2 to 3, from 3 to 4, from 4 to whatever they were. You went through manually and did that. Well, in this system now, we have that automated using the P code, update P code. So what this process does is it goes in and it finds people that are on the P code, and then in the salary schedule table, there's a field called next P code, and it will move them to that next code. So we're going to get into each one of these and show you what it does. But basically, once you select your item, you can get a count, and it will show you how many records you're going to process. So if you're a large district and you click both of these and you get something like 900 records, you might want to uncheck the certificated specialist and do those separately. And that's pretty much what the count's for. And then you just hit recalculate, that button, the recalc button, and you're done. And at the bottom, it'll tell you it did 11 with no errors. If there is an error, there is a record pushed out in the file manager, and it's in the merge folder. So if an error occurs, you can go over here and see what the errors are. So you can come over here to File Manager, and then you'd come down here to the merge folder, and you would see a file here that would tell you what your errors are. And that's as simple as the Recalc tool works. Now I'm going to take you through a couple of things in the Word document just to show you. So where we're at is I've gone through kind of what each of these items are and what they do. And I'm going to talk to you about this, notes about the update P code. So we're going to look at this part of the document. So for salaries that are not automatically calculated, like classified or coaches, you have these steps on the salary schedule. So this is a sample from the salary schedule table, where in this salary schedule we have step A1, A2, A3, and these are the three amounts for that. Well, the system generates a P code for that, and it's based on whatever is in this and this column. It automatically generates that. Now we have a new field called next P code. So you would say, well, everybody on A1 should go to 1A2 because that's the next P code. And everybody on 1A2 should go to 1A3. And then when you get to your top step, whatever that is, 14, 15 steps, whatever it is, that one will stay at the same step because it's the top step. So what the system does when you use the utility for P code, it just goes in and finds everybody that's on this P code and moves them to that one. This P code to that, and this P code to that. And then once you've done that, you can recalculate the salaries, and everybody will be moved up a step. So that's a huge new process that should really help with the efficiency of maintaining your non-calculated records. So as a sample, you might say, oh, this should be a non-calculated. My bad on the screenshot. And then classified, and then your cutoff year, and then just update P code and run it, and it will move everybody up a step. Now, again, what you can do is do that Excel file before and after, and then you would get, in that case, in your Excel file, let's go back up here and grab it, you would grab a field that would show their step or their P code, and then it would say 1A1, and the new one would be 1A2. And what you probably would have is a lot of false, meaning, oh, those people did get moved up. And then where you had a true would be people that were at the top step. But it really helps you know who moved and who did not move. So that is the Recalculate tool and the variety of tools that you can use within it to do credits. And I've gone through and shown, giving you some examples of the variety of screens. So one last summary, pick your calculated or non, pick your employee type, select your cutoff year or your work area year, select the process you want, get a count, recalculate. Before and after, do the export information, optionally if you'd like to, in order so that you can compare information. Now what I am going to do is open up the microphone and see if we have any questions on the Recalculate tool.
Sherry?
Yes.
This is Cindy. I'm on the P code for the recalculate, does that work here in Yakima for the, the contract steps?
Well, your contract stuff for teachers is all done based on the automated, so you wouldn't use P code for teachers. But in Yakima, you would use it for your coaches because you're tracking all your coaches, right? So the trick is, and let me show you this, you're going to want to go into your lookup tables, and you're going to want to come into your employee tables to your salary schedule, and you're going to want to make sure that that next P code is populated in your salary schedule. So if you were to look at your coach's schedule, I'm not saying this is that one, but if you were, then you could look at that and say, oh, just click the little plus here and make sure this next P code field is populated so that it knows where to put them to the next year. That's it.
Okay. All right.
And then you can use that process. Now, the last thing I would say to you is the first time you're going to do this, just contact support. We'll do a webinar with you or a call with you. We'll check your data and make sure you're all set up correctly and then kind of walk you through it because this is a whole new process, and we want to make sure you get comfortable with it. Thanks, Cindy.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Other questions? That was a good one. Okay, then I'm going to go back to muting you and go on to the next section of the webinar. So here we go. All right. So the next thing we're going to take a look at on the Management Utility screen is the Credits tab. And in the Credits tab, as it shows you in your documentation, there are really two different methods of utilizing this particular utility. And I sort of say one's on the left and one's on the right. So we'll go through what I call Method 1, which I have identified here in the Word document. So this method utilizes the fields on the left side of the screen. And what I've given you is not only a screenshot, but also a guide here as to what goes into every one of those fields. So let's take a look at that. So let's just say that you offered a first aid course, and it's clock hour eligible, and you had 15 coaches attend it, and you want to record that. And maybe of the 15, you just want to record the 10 that were teachers. And you don't want to have to go to each individual person and put in that credit record 10 times. No. You can mass load it here. And you did have this in the old EDRM as well. But you'll pick your credit area, which means are you wanting it to apply to a certificated placement or is this just classified only? And then for the course, these are, of course, the required, the start date if you have it, the end date, the state, the institution. The course ID is just an alternate number, and I've shown you that in the Word document, that perhaps this was offered by some other agency or something, and you want to put that ID number in there. You can do that. A department, a course number, just like you were entering a regular individual course. The title, the number of credits. So if it's clock, you're going to put in 10, and then you select clock, and it will go ahead and create that for you. It'll convert it for you. So put in your whole number and then the type of credit, and it will convert it. And then here we have some other boxes. Sometimes you want to add a credit, but for some reason you want to exclude it and not have it calculated in the totals. Pretty rare, but you can check that. That's what it does. This is to select your course approval that's applicable for the class. If this were a coach class, then you could record the WIAA subject area, so those are there. And then again, if it was coach, if it's rules clinic, you can check that or not. And then you can check for STEM or TPEP, so you have those. But once you have the left side of this field filled out, all you do is select the people that you want to have this credit posted to. And so you can select them by name. You can just do an alpha and say, I want to send it to this person, and then I'm going to send it to this person, and just keep picking people like that. You can do a whole bargaining unit if you want to, or you can do it by location. Maybe everybody at the high school took the first aid class, then you could do that. Then what you do is you click Select Employees. And what happens when you do that, I'm going to come right back over to the Word document here. So we've got the screen. This tells you what to put in the fields that I just described. Then after you've completed the fields, select the persons that you want, like I described. And then you're going to, so here's a completed screen. You can zoom this up a little bit more. So here's a completed screen where I put in all the course information, picked the people I wanted to have it. I didn't do unit or location in this case. I just did employees. And then I click Select Employees, and up will come those 4 people. And if I didn't want it to go to a person, I can trash can it. This is a temporary table. Throughout the utilities, when you select the records or select employees, it's going to pop up a table of information. And this table is temporary. So if I wanted to delete somebody, oh, I didn't mean to put that person in, I don't have to go all the way back. I can just trash can it right here. But then when you're ready to post the credits, just hit Post Credits. And guess what? It'll post them. And then you know who you did. So if you only did 3 or 4, you could go to those persons and recalculate their credit total. Or you could go back to the Recalc utility and recalculate credits. Really depends on how many that you're doing. So that is method 1 of how to mass input credits for people. Now the other method requires you to use an Excel file. So what you're going to do is create an Excel file in a certain format, and then you're just going to click this Import Credits file. And you're going to, excuse me, I should have said up here, you identify the person you want to import for. And so say it's a new hire. And this is kind of a cool thing because you might get a new hire, and if it's anybody that uses our systems, just ask them to export out the credit record for that person and send it to you. And then you're going to be able to take that Excel file, do a couple of modifications, pick the name of that new person, and then you're going to click this import, and you're going to browse and get that file and upload it. And that's all there is to it. And so I think of all the times that you get files, you hire somebody from another district, ask them to export out of Skyward or out of Business Plus or out of our systems, wherever they keep those detailed records, ask them to send it to you. You're going to get an Excel file that's not going to match the format that we use, but you'll just need to do a little tweaking on it. Now, in all of your sites, you have a sample of that Excel file. So we've given it to you. It's in your resources, so you can download that Excel file anytime you want, and then you open it up, and there is a separate set of instructions in your resources for how to modify this Excel file. So this is a sample of one that has been modified. So just to show you kind of the modifications that are required, you're going to have to put the user's ID in from our system. So this is a new hire. Their user ID is 111. So I put that in all the records. And then what's the credit code that I'm recording? In this case, this is actually one I was doing for Shelton. So the credits happen to be all NDC, but otherwise they would be QTR or SEM. And then you've got start date optional, end date. Now one of the things that you'll get when you get the file from somewhere else is the institution name. But you're going to have to put the institution ID from our system in there. Once you do this a few times, so you really get used to it. Like if you do a lot for Shelton, you know what your ID is. You'll get used to that. And then other than that, you're just going to use from the file you have the department, the course number, the title, the number of credits. You'll have to put 0 into the exclude. You should have the state. The course approval code will have to match your code. So if they were using A, B, C, D, and you're using 1, 2, 3, 4, you'd have to change those. And then the credit area code, this is for certificated degree, otherwise it's OT for classified. And then generally these fields are all going to be 0, coach category, rules, clinic, STEM, TPEP. Unless they happen to be true, it would just be -1, that's all. And then created by your user ID and today's date. And then you save this Excel file. Then you save it one more time as a CSV file, and then that's what you're going to load up into the system. So it takes a little bit of work, but it's a lot less time than entering them manually. Now, if you have a new hire that only has 3 credits coming over from another district, go enter the 3 in their record. But when they have 80 credits, 50 credits, even 40 credits, it's way easier and less time-consuming. And, of course, the first time you do this, it'll take you a little longer to do it. And, as always, you can get a hold of our support team, and we'll walk you through that process and show you and check your file if you want before you attempt to upload it. I know I've worked with a couple of you that are on the webinar today to use that tool. So it's pretty cool. You just, the person's name, you've saved your CSV file, you browse and get it, and you import the file, and those records will instantly be in that person's record. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute and see if we have questions about the credit tool before we go on to the next one. So any questions about method 1 or 2 of importing or mass adding credits to records? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions, so we're going to go on and look at the utility tool for dealing with experience. So I'll go ahead and mute you again. Okay, so again, we're going to be on this part of the document on experience, and I'll go ahead and bring the system up here, and we'll go on over to the experience. There we go. Okay, and on the experience tab, we again have the calculated or non-calculated, but we have 2 new buttons over here. Are we posting experience or deleting experience? This tool is used when you are creating a new year. So right around the corner here, coming up in February and March, a lot of you are going to be setting up your 2019-20 records. And depending on what you do for your budget in order to match things up, you may want to post experience at that time, and then, or you may not. You may do it later. When you post experience, that obviously can affect people's placement on salary schedules, where you're updating that amount and including the 17-18 information in, I have to say that right, the 18-19 experience information in the 19-20 school year calculations, or you're using the P code to move people up. Some of you do your budget without experience moved up, and some of you do your budget with it moved up. So you'll need to make a decision when you're going to post experience, but ultimately you will end up doing it. The other thing that becomes affected when you post experience is issuing the teacher contracts, which are issued right here. Management reports push out your contracts really easy. Do you want that experience included in the contract when you issue it in the spring? Most districts do, because the contract will just say this reflects the experience and credits we have on file for 1920 as of this date, and then you have some language in your contract that says your placement will be updated per the collective bargaining agreement rules. So when you update later, voila. Other districts go, no, we don't want that experience in there. We're not ready to post it. We don't want to show it to them because things can happen between March, April when you issue a contract and the end of the year. Which brings me to the last note about posting experience and making a decision of when to do that. So if you decide to post experience in February, that's fine. It'll take whatever's in the employee's work area. So let's say they're a full 1.0 FTE teacher or a full 1.0 FTE custodian, and that's going to post to their experience record. So that's their permanent experience record in their employee record on the experience tab is going to post that information. So now what happens is we come along to April and this person has some situation arise that requires them to take leave without pay for the rest of the year. So now they've got like 72 days of leave without pay and they did not work the full year. You have got to remember then to go to the experience record for that person and manually change that. So I'm going to come over, if you go into your search, just to kind of go over what I'm talking about here. I'll just go search anybody here. Just give you an idea. So we have Mary Abbott here, a famous little example, and it wouldn't matter if this is certificate or classified, but when we look at her work area record, we're going to see that she's a 1.0 teacher for this year. So we have the current year teacher full-time. And well, actually, right now I have Mary Abbott not a full-time teacher, so that's okay. Let's say that was her FTE, 0.6333, and we post experience. Then it's going to put that record onto her experience record in the experience tab. So when you use the utility, it's going to take all that data from the work area, and it will post a 2018 record in here at that .633 FTE. But again, what if Mary Abbott for some reason didn't work all of that .633 FTE and you've already posted it? Then you've got to come in here and find that record and edit it. So the trick to remember is that from the date that you post credit, or excuse me, post experience, know that, just put that in your head at that point in time, if somebody does not work the full year that you've assigned them in the work area, then you want to go ahead and manually also update their experience record. Otherwise, this post experience works really slick. So all you end up doing is, I'll bring the Word document over here to show you. Oh, get a hold of my mouse here. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. So for experience, you're just going to pick, is it calculated or non-calculated? Post the experience. From is going to be the work area. And then you've got these two little options here, so I want to describe those. If it is calculated or certificated, you're always going to say use work FTE. Boom, you're going to use that. Select the records and post it. And when you select the records, it'll bring up that temporary table showing you what the records are. So here you go. Calculated, this was my 2018 work area. Use work FTE, select the records, up they come. If you want a trash can one, you can do that right now. And then you just post the records. And then when you're done, you need to go back to the Recalc utility and recalc the placement and the salary because you've moved them up with their level of experience, and you would recalculate for the new year, 2019-20. Now, when you do this for the non-calculated, so let me come over here, experience, and you go non-calculated, you're going to have the option again to select from a work area. So let's say I'm ready to post my 18-19 experience. And then you have this if days equals 1 or use work FTE. A lot of the classified, you'll use this. And here's what it does, and I'll show you again in a moment on a classified record. There's a separate field on the classified experience record that does not exist on the calculated records called cum step. And so what this does is it would look into the employee work area, and let's say I put in 90 here, and it would say, oh, okay, when I post experience, if they worked 90 or more days in the 2018-19 school year that I'm getting ready to post into the system, then update or increment that cum step by 1. So it's going to change the cum step. So let me show you again where that's at, and then we'll be able to wrap up this experience one. So I'll just do a search on classified here and search. And we'll deal with Sally Elmore here. So some of you maintain this cum step and some of you do not because you use it for seniority and a variety of other things. But on the experience screen, when you're looking at a non-calculated record, you don't have all of that totals that you do for certificated. Instead, you have a seniority FTE. Some of you keep that custom field. But you have this cum step, which indicates she's been here 4 years. Well, when I post experience, if I said if she worked more than 90 days, and she did, the system will move this cum step from 4 up to 5. And that's the only difference that there is on a classified or non-calculated versus a certificated when doing the actual posting of experience. So we're going to get back here to post experience. So what we've done is we've covered the actual posting of experience. Again, that will update their experience record. And then if you want to, based on the records that you've posted, recalculate their placement or move their P code or any of those kind of things, you would go back to the recalc totals and do that. Now, you do have a utility to delete experience, but when you do this, it is gone. So let's just say that you mistakenly posted the experience for a year twice. You can delete it. So you can just pick it and say, oh, I did 2018, I want to get rid of it and do it over. Or you posted it and you didn't mean to. You meant to wait another month before you did it. When you go delete year, it's gone. That's it. So just know that it's gone. You'd have to repost it. But we just give you that option because sometimes that does happen, right? So, yeah. So we have that is the posting experience tool. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to unmute all and see, do you have any questions about posting experience or deleting experience?
It says or, so I'm thinking you could just download your license. And it
I hear somebody talking on the background phone. Hopefully we can. Whoever's speaking, if you cannot speak right now, that's what happens sometimes on webinars. Go ahead and ask your question. I'll try to listen over that.
Course note for the PESD.
Sherry, under this is Cindy from Yakima, and under
prior
my
to or
under
within
post
1 year
from,
after
I don't have any of those
30
other
hour
buttons.
clock hour or 3/4 credit approved.
So you're on your system.
So I'm
experience.
thinking you have within
calculated
1
clicking,
year,
and you don't have any of these buttons?
one of these
any
courses.
Of the, yes,
so
any of the ones
says,
under post
note,
from.
provided that an individual who meets
so when you go
all
to
of the
post
requirements.
Okay, I will take a look at that and see what's going on, okay?
provided
And I appreciate you letting me know that. Thank you.
ESA course or
Sorry, we're having to talk over somebody. You'll
or
understanding it that way.
Sorry. Shall be issued
Okay,
a
other questions?
permit valid for 1 year. Okay. So I'm thinking you can get with everything you have a temporary permit.
Just get in there quick.
So any other questions?
And you may not even have to complete this if you get this.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you all so we can go back to the next step then. Okay, so the next tab we're going to look at is the work area tab. So again, in the Word document, if you want to go to that and follow along, the work area is used when you create a new year. So you can use this to copy 1 year to another, and when you copy, you can use the option to create a new year. You can use this tool to change end dates. Let's say that your calendar changed dates, or you can delete a work area. Now, as a note I've got in the Word document, new year. Before you can create a new year, you've got to set up your new year. And if you haven't done this yet, it's perfectly fine to go it right and do it now. So you can go to Lookup Tables, System Manager, Lookup Tables, and under your shared tables at the very bottom is a table called Work Areas. And if you don't see a 2019-20 area in, go ahead and hit New Work Area. Now you'll select, look down and see what you've last used. Like if you've last used 2, then your new one will be 3. If you've last used whatever 2018 was, if it's 4, then your new one will be 5. And so you would just pick whatever the work area is going to be, and then you put in the 4-digit, the first part of it, like 2019. And then you can put in a description. Now, for many of you, this description is inserted into your contract document. So if you want it to say 2019 school year or whatever you want, you can do that. Or you can just have it say 2019, 2020, however you want that to look. It's just a description. And then the starting and ending is nothing more than kind of what is your budget cycle. So usually it's like 9/1/19 to 8/31/20. Can you believe that? Holy cow. Okay. The basic and residual is for Vancouver's ProDev only, as well as the tri-hours, so you don't have to worry about those. What's your experience cutoff? It's going to be August 31 of that year, and the credit cutoff 10/1 of that year, unless you end up doing something different with your CBA, your collective bargaining agreement, because of the option to now do salary schedules locally. But those are still the state reporting cutoffs. So keep in mind that the state reporting cutoffs have not changed. If your district alters this and allows credits to be turned in beyond this date, you may still want to use 10/1 as a cutoff because that's what you have to report to the state. You can't. We still cannot report credits earned after 10/1 to the state. So be mindful of that with all the crazy stuff going on with bargaining right now. But basically, you just establish your work area year. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do that now. And then whenever you're ready, the second part of this is under a table called Employee Tables Defaults. So that when you go into records at some point in time, you don't want the 2018 data to be the first record you see. You can just change your default year then to 2019 and save it. So you've got your shared lookup table work area, and then you've got the default for the school year that just says what's the default year you want to have populate when you do things. and you can modify that. And you can do that anytime you want, and these are independent of each other. So you can go ahead and set up your work area table now and switch this which year you see in April or May if you want, whenever you want to. So that's the first part, an important part. Before we can roll a work area, we certainly have to do that. Now, we're going to be doing another webinar coming up in another week or so on creating a new year, and we'll be going through this specifically. But basically, make sure that for the new year, you have your work area, your calendars, and your salary schedule set up, and there's a reference to that in this document. And there's another detailed document for creating a new year that we'll be going over in next week's webinar. Or I can't remember if it's next week or the week after, but it's coming up. Okay, so after everything is all set up, then what you're going to do is you're going to come into the system and get ready to do your work area role. So you'll do calculated separate from non-calculated. So I'm ready, and I want to copy from 2018, and I want to copy to 2019, and I want a new year, so it'll pick up the calendars and salary schedules for 2019-20. And you can make a choice. Do you want to transfer your comments or not? However you choose, it's up to you. That's a yes or no. And then select your work area records. And it's going to bring up the records that it will create in the new work area. And voila, you just post it, and you've got your new work area created. Boom. Now, you'll need to go back to recalculate and recalculate everything. But that's what you'll do to be done with that. Okay. So in the system then, and I just did a back arrow to come back into utilities. I've already posted that once in I don't want to do it again. So for the non-calculated, when you come in here and you want to go to work area, for your classified, it's really again, that simple. Non-calculated, and then you just say from what year, 18 to 19, new year, transfer comments if you want to or not, select them and post it. That's it. That's your new year. That's all it takes to create the new year. But you have to make sure that your new year is set up in the work area, your salary schedules and your calendars for next year are set up for it to work correctly. And then you would go back to recalculate totals and just run through the recalculation so it will pick up credits after 10-1-18 and apply them to 10-1-19. It would pick up experience that you've posted if you've chosen to do that now. You'd want to update placement for certs. For classified, and for everybody, you'd want to update salary. And that's all there is to creating a new work area. It's pretty simple. We'll go through it again in detail in next week's webinar. Again, I highly recommend that before you do this, like any utility tool, to go out to that export information and grab the data before you do it, and then the data after you do it, and then you can use that exact formula to compare any fields you want to, hours, days, salary, whatever you want to. You can compare the data and take a look at what was before and what was after. Okay, then we do have a tool here to change the end date. So if you changed your calendar and you said, oh my gosh, our calendars have changed, all you have to do is pick the year and then select the work area records. It's going to go look and find the tables that have done that now, or where you've changed the calendars. And it will update the whole work area records. But I'm here to say to you this. Some of you have done some pretty significant changing in the calendars. You set one up, and then, oh my gosh, you go through bargaining or whatever, and it ends up really being different. Please, please, please don't use this tool without contacting us first. Contact our support team so that we can work with you and make sure that this is the right utility for doing that. Sometimes it's just faster for us we can go in the background and run queries for you that do that much faster, and we're more than happy to do that for you. It's what you get with customer support. So sometimes you want to use this tool, and sometimes you do not want to use the tool. So just be mindful of that. And I've got a note about that at the bottom in your Word document. Now, delete work area. Again, if you've created a work area and you want to get rid of it, you said, I created 2019 and I messed it all up, you can delete it. But when you click delete, it's a goner. So just be mindful of that, okay? And that's all there is really to the work area process. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute, and see if we have any questions about the work area.
I can print it out.
Okay, and
I
again,
looked
we
at it.
have people
I thought
talking
I
in the
printed it
background,
out.
so sorry about that.
My
But
PT license?
if you
Yes.
have questions,
Yes,
can you talk
I
over the
still have it in
person
the
that's
car.
speaking so that
No,
we
I
can
can print it out. I have
figure out
access
who's
to
speaking?
that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, number 1, apply for your certificate.
Does anybody have any
Number
questions?
2, order your transcript. Number 3, give that code to the
Ah, I figured out who it was talking, so I can mute them. Okay, so here we go. So any questions on delete the work area? Okay, or recalculate, new year. That'll be the next webinar. Well, let's go down to events and traits. So on events and traits, this is a pretty helpful tool. Get this screen pulled out a little bit more for you. Okay. So let's say that you want to had 15 new hires attend an orientation, and you want to record that. Well, you could go into each of those 15 people, edit their record, go down to the Traits and Events tab, and add that. But not me, I wouldn't do that. So when you want to add an event, you're going to use this area of the screen, and when you want to add a trait, you're going to use this area of the screen. This is pretty simple. For an event, all you do is pick the event, whatever it happens to be, so a new employee orientation, okay? When you're adding an event, you have 2 dates that you can put in. In this case, it's a single event, so I can just put in whatever that orientation date was. I'm just making something up here. I'll come back to these fields in a minute. You don't have to put in a second date. If it was a training or something that had 2 dates, you could. And if you want to make a note about it, like the 2019-20 new teacher orientation or something like that, you can. And then the hide or hide search really is not applicable because we don't have anybody other than HR people using employee records. That may happen in the future, but this would hide the data either on the employee report or in the search tool. So really you don't have to worry too much about those at that point. Now at this point, because I'm not doing trait, I'm just doing an event, who do I want to add it to? So I can just go over and pick these people by person, whoever attended, just keep going and pick their name, whoever it was, till you get your 10 or 12 people in here. Or if you did something for a whole unit or a whole location, you can pick that, and then you'll select your employees, and then you post it, and it will post that event. So there's the 2 people, and you hit post, and it's going to put that event into their record. So it's a really cool way of being able to mass add an event. And adding a trait works the same way. Obviously, these would be blank, and you just pick the trait you want to add. So if you had a bunch of substitutes you hired, and you wanted to give them the approved to sub or the approved to sub cert or classified or whatever trait you have that you want to track, you hired 8 paraeducators and you want to give them that trait, go ahead and give it to them. So obviously your traits and your events are unique to your district. But it's a cool way of just being able to add a trait or event. Now I'm going to come off that tab and come back on the screen to show you a couple other tools on here. So other things that you can do in the event or trait, and notice up here too, when I was on event and then when you're on trait, you can switch the button just so it knows what you're doing. And you pick your employee type and your names. Now, you can also, when you're doing an event, let's just say you wanted to know how many coaches were missing an event called first aid training. Okay, I don't have that on here, but if it was first aid training, you could pick it, first aid training, and just select them, and it will bring that up. So if you're wondering who's missing or who might have it, but the date is blank, then you can click these. That's what the missing and the blank is for. So you can take an event and say, are they missing that event? Or maybe if you're tracking paraeducators as a separate employee type, you have paraeducator, and you want to see who is missing the trait of para because you're tracking who's met their highly qualified requirements. Who's missing that? You can do that and then select the employees. It's going to basically bring up a report for you based on what you've searched for. So I have a sample here in the Word document. And I've given you exactly what to put into each of the fields that I was just describing, so you have that as a resource. Here's the search there. So when you do that, you're going to come up, oh, I thought I had a little sample. I guess I didn't put that in there. I apologize. But basically, when you select employees, I don't know what I'm going to get with this because I got a bunch of goofy things, but it will bring up your group of people, and here you go, and then you can post that to their record if you wish to, or you're just seeing a set of data. It's completely up to you. And that's all there is to the events and traits. Again, pretty simple. We're going to be moving to the evaluation, which is a little more complex, but I'll open it up and see if any of you happen to have questions about what's happening with events and traits. So, any questions? Okay, well, let's move on to the evaluation tab. We talked about this a little bit last week when we were covering all of the employee tabs of data. But the evaluation tab is one that you need to be mindful that you have to set up your evaluation table first, because this is going to give you the ability to add evaluations. So maybe you're tracking the CERT observations for new hires, and you can go find all your new hires and add those folks, or you can just search for people. You can roll, so you can move people from one evaluation type to another. So maybe they're coming off their new hire comprehensive year 4 and they're going to move to the focused year 1, then you can use that role. And you can also update, like to change an evaluator. A person left and everybody needs to get a new evaluator, or you want to update other records, existing evaluation records. But let's take a look before we get into these functions, which I've described in the Word document. Let's take a quick look before we do that at the table for evaluations. So I'm going to go over here to lookup tables and come over here to evaluations, which is an employee table. Okay, so I have this pretty well set up, and I have examples in the documentation for you. But like, you're going to set groups. So here's my administrator evaluations, and I only have 2 types, annual and then maybe a new administrator. You can have whatever you want. But for my teacher group, let me go ahead and go to teachers. You'll see that I have a whole boatload here. The reason is that I've chosen to track, and you don't have to, but you can, the CERT new hires. I know I have everybody from Washington on this webinar today. So CERT new hires are required to be observed at least twice per year. So a lot of districts want to track that those are being done. And then in their P3 or provisional 3-year, they're required to be observed 3 times. So you can set that, quote, evaluation type up and track it in the system. And then we have the other teacher types like probation, the comprehensive agreed, comprehensive retire, rehire, comprehensive cycle for 1 year. The reason I have that is this. You'll see that we have comprehensive new year. They're 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they go to the focused year 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4. But when they're done with this, they have to go back to comprehensive for just 1 year. So I chose to call it comprehensive cycle for 1 year. In other words, they're cycling into that for 1 year. You can call it what you want to, but it allows you to differentiate between the people that are coming off of 4 and only going to do the comprehensive for 1 year and then go back to the focus. So because of the way that I've set this up, in the future I'm going to be able to take the comprehensive new year 4 and move them to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Now I also have this one called hold for roll, and this is pretty important. It's really important if you're going to use the system to automatically roll, because you have to find a place to start. So usually what I do, and I'll talk about this again in my documentation, is I will start with this comprehensive cycle for 1 year and put them in the what I call hold for roll. Then I'll go through and I'll move the focus year 1 to the comprehensive cycle for 1, because I've moved all those out. So everybody in here has gone to the hold for roll. So now I'll move the 4 to the cycle 1 year, and then I'll move 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 1 to 2, then comprehensive 4 to 1, 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 1 to 2. When I'm all done with that, then I'll take the people that are in hold for roll and put them also back into the focus year 1. So this is all written out, and again, if it's the first time that you're working with evaluations, we'll be more than happy to do a webinar with you and go over all of that with you. So let's go back to the utility for evaluations. And I have in the document in the Word document for you some notes about each of the functions. So the first function we're going to be looking at is adding an evaluation. So again, your Word document's pretty explicit as to what to do. You're pretty smart cookies. So I want to add, so I'm going to click Add. And then you can pick to everybody or to just some people, whatever you want to choose to do. What kind of evaluation do you want to add? So maybe I've got a whole bunch of classified new hires, and I want to add their probation evaluation for 2018 or 19, whatever your year is. You can go ahead and put in the due date if they were all going to be the same. It's got to be done by 11/30/2018, whatever that date might be. Now, if they're all different locations, you wouldn't put in the evaluator. You can come back and use the update tool to do that. Or if you're doing it by location, if you're just going to pick people by a location, like I'm going to do all the classified new people at the high school, then you can pick the high school evaluator. Now, this evaluator drop-down box only displays people that have the role of supervisor in the system. So when you edit somebody's record, like Vera Aplong, and you're on the very first screen, at the bottom, there's check boxes for the roles. You can give that person the role of supervisor, and that's what makes them show up in this evaluator drop-down box. So once you pick them, however you want to pick them, maybe you want to do them by contract type. Maybe you have classified new hires, and you can just pick them by that. So whatever you want. Then you're going to go ahead and select your employees. So I'm going to come back over here to the Word document. And you'll see that it'll this tells you what to put into the different fields, as I was just doing. So here's a sample of it set up where I did pick a particular school. And then you select employees, and it'll bring it up. This is what you're going to post. Now, we also have in the evaluation tool an export to Excel. So if there's some reason you want to export that list out before you post it so you have a record of what you did, you can do that. It'll just open an Excel file. Otherwise, you post it, and those people, whether it's 2 or 252, are going to have that evaluation type added to their record. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at the search tool. But before I do that, I want to make one last comment about this evaluator drop-down box. So I'm going to come back over here to search. And I'll just search for any in my little database. And we'll look at Vera Aplong here, who is she's a supervisor. So what we have her marked as a supervisor, even though she's a helper, so I don't know why we have that in our database, but notice that supervisor is checked here. So this is what lets them show up in that evaluator drop-down box. Now, if Vera leaves, you might want to just say, oh, I need to remove supervisor. No. This is the one exception that you do not remove that, because if you do, when you go back to look at their individual records, the supervisor's name will not show up. It just shows up with their ID number. So even if they leave the district, and it's important when they leave the district that if you have like the job application system, you want to remove roles so they can't access applicant data. But with the employee record, if you're just going to mark them inactive, but don't remove this supervisor role because it's just like, okay, when they were employed here, they were a supervisor. So keep that. Once you light it up, just keep it lit up. If they've ever been a supervisor, they should have that marked. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the evaluation tool now, and we're going to look a little bit at the search tool. Pretty understandable. You can look at the screen and go, okay, click search, what do I do? So you can choose a type if you want, like teacher, or whatever you want, and then you can pick the evaluation type. Well, I want to find everybody that has this specific evaluation. Now, you might want to do something like I'll use classified as an example, with your classified annual evaluation and say, of my classified people, who doesn't have one of those for 2018? Who did I miss setting up an evaluation for? What? And you select them and you'll get your list. That's as easy as that is. So this is just a matter of playing around with what you want to search. But this would find everybody that has that evaluation, and you could even search further by due date or by an evaluator or by location. Or if you just want to say who doesn't have an evaluation, just check that and it'll go find them. So it's pretty intuitive in terms of doing a search. Again, on your documentation, you click search. I've told you here how the fields you can use, and if you want to use those in the search, here's a sample of a search I set up, and then when you get it, you'll get your data. And in this case, you wouldn't post. You would just, because you were searching for missing, you would just say, I want to know who those are. You can go ahead and export it to Excel. And actually, that if they were missing, you can post that. I would say if you're just looking for things in general, you wouldn't post. But if they were missing and you now want to create that, you certainly could post it. Otherwise, you just hit the export to Excel and go from there. Okay, let's take a look at the role evaluations. I pretty much gave you the intro to that. So the key with the rolling evaluations is to have a plan ahead of time. Now, to have the plan ahead of time, I showed you that evaluation table, but you can't get that into Excel from there. And what I want to do is I want to get a list of my evaluations so I can make a plan of the sequence I'm going to roll. So I'm going to show you a little shortcut trick. Under System Manager, if I go to Database Information, and I'm at the top of page 17 on your Word handout I sent you, these are all the tables. So I'm just going to type in eval. And there are basically multiple tables. So this is the detail. But this is anything that's ICT, that's the setup table. The employee evaluations, that's the actual evaluation records. But this would be the setup table. So what I can do is go ICT evaluation types, and now I have all the evaluation types in my system, and I can just export this out to Excel. So you do that just in System Manager, Database Information, and you can filter for a table, and anything with ICT is your setup table. So if you wanted to see, for example, what do I have set up for certificate types? You look for the ICT certificates. This is all your certificate types. Or if you want to look for what endorsements do I have set up in the system, that's your endorsement codes. Open them, push them out to Excel. So with this evaluation, we want to set up a plan. So I took the Excel file and I just culled out of that my certificated evaluations and I made my plan. And this is important to do because if you start rolling and you don't have a plan and you get the sequence, you're kind of messed up. So what I did is I made a plan here. Comprehensive cycle for, this is the group I'm going to put in the hold for roll. And then I'm going to go down to number 2. I'm going to move focus year 1 to comprehensive, and then this is my 3rd thing and my 4th thing and my 5th thing. So that's the sequence of rolling those, and it's important that you know what that sequence is so that when you're in evaluations, you would choose then to roll, and then you'd pick the evaluation type, whatever that is. Again, was picking the comprehensive cycle for 1 year. That's my first step. For 2018, I want to find that group of people, and I want to move them to the hold for roll for 2019. So that's my little temporary group. And I can put in the due date. If I'm doing it by location, I can do the evaluator, just skip that, select, and post. And then after I do that group, I'd go to the next group, the next group, the next group. I will tell you that we're working on something in the table so that you can preset this sequence. And if you do that, we're going to have a button over here where you're just going to say use auto sequence, and you won't have to do these one at a time. It'll just use the sequence set up in the table itself. So that's the rolling. Again, you're going to do it for the first time, get in touch with us. And then we have the update evaluation. So here it depends on what you want to update. So you would find your evaluation type, whatever that is, that group. You could even find it by the evaluator. But if you want to do a new evaluator, so let's just say that, actually I'm going to come out of here and come to a new screen. Let's say that an evaluator left your district. They're gone, and you've got a new principal that's going to evaluate everybody at this elementary school. So what you can do is you can go update. And then if you want, because it's a location, you can pick the location and you can say, well, it's Briar Glen Elementary. And the old principal was this person, and the new principal is this person. You don't even have to pick an evaluation type. It's just going to find everybody at this location. You've got to put in a year, sorry. 2018. It's going to find everybody who has a 2018 evaluation of any type. Going to replace the evaluator, Robert Bidwell, with Timothy Crees at that location, select, and post. That's it. That's all there is to it. So updating also lets you update by the contract type or the completed date. I'll come back off of here and clear this and come back into update again. You get multiple options with the update tool. But it basically lets you mass update instead of having to go in and find things. So one of the things that you can do is you can come in and find like classified evaluation at transportation and put in the complete date and post that. So you have 4 different tools in evaluation: add, search, roll, update. I'm going to go ahead and unmute and see if you have questions as we move on to the next tool. I can't believe it's 10 o'clock already. Okay, questions?
Okay, so when I
So, Sherry, are we allowed to add our own type of evaluations into the table?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Just go right into System Manager, look up table, and set up your evaluation types. And then once you do that, if you want us to just double check it for you based on our HR experience, just shoot us an email and say, hey, I set up my evaluation types. Will you take a look at it for me? And we'll be glad to do that.
Okay. And I did try to add one, and it would not let me add.
Then shoot me a note, and we'll take a look at it, because you should be able to do that with no trouble.
Okay.
Okay. Yep, we'll do that. Yeah, we found that several districts I've worked with recently have been keeping the evaluations in a separate Excel file, but then every time you do that, you have to update their name or their position or the location. You've got to do that over in Excel. Excel is kind of like another database, really. So it's like, why keep a separate Excel file when we think at least you should be able to do everything from here? And if you think you have something that can't be done from here, let us know. We'll certainly take a look at it. And then we can produce, reports for you that you might need. Maybe you have something that's unique as to what you need. Otherwise, you can get all of your evaluation data in the export information tool. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the contracts tab. These last 2 tabs are really easy. So the contracts, you're basically going to update. So every year, this is particularly true for the class or certificated provisional year 1, 2, 3. So I would say I'm getting ready to do, I've set up my 2019 year. I want to find all my classroom teachers, and you want to do this in the right order, that you want to take your P3s and move them to continuing and just do it. It will do it when you do that. Then you go in and you go P2s to P3s. So we just want to make sure you do it in the right sequence. P1s to P2, that's another one. You could also find everybody that's a classified probationary evaluation and move them to the annual, whatever you want. This updates the contract or employment type in the work area record. So that will do that for you, so you don't have to manually go through and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and show you these last 2 tabs real quick, because these are very customized for clients. We have tribal schools that can directly load a 275 file. They do not have to go through any other system. We have created that file for them, and I see one of our folks are on the webinar today. So what they do is they just pick the year, and they export to file, and then they go over here to System Manager, over to the File Manager. And when they come into File Manager, and they come down here to the export area, this is the file. It's ready for them. They open this file, and then they use tools that SPI provides to load that file, and voila, it's done. Now, it took us a long time to get this correct. I'm waiting for Kay to give me the final okay, because there's 3 sections to that report. But that's how they're able to very easily do their 275 report. So we created all the export data because they maintain it in our system. And then the last tab you have is the Seniority tab. Several of you maintain seniority information because you're required to do that. Sometimes for classified, it's really easy. It's just an event, seniority date, custodian seniority date, period. You just go get the event report, and you've got it. That's all there is to it. But for other seniority, it gets more complex, especially for teachers where they have categories, and this experience can count and that can't count. Again, we sometimes find you're doing all of that in another Excel file where you're having to, again, maintain the location, the position, all that stuff. You don't have to do that. You can work with us, and we can move all of that into the system so you can have it right here. And then depending on how your tools are set up, and we would work with everybody individually, you basically pick the year. You can calculate ranking. I know that Yakima does this, and they can calculate by rank or category. And or you can print your report. And when you're ready to print your report, you can do alpha, or you can do by rank or by category. And those are going to all be customized based on what how your seniority report works. So I've completed the last 3 tabs: contract, 275, seniority, and I'm going to open it for that set of questions, and I just have one other thing to show you. So let's unmute and see if you have any questions about actually any of these tabs right now. Any questions at all about any of the tabs? Okay, I have one other thing I want to show you then, just so that you know. When you have data in the system, you need reports, and you can obviously go to management reports, and many of you do have custom reports here, but you also can use the export information tool. So in the export information tool, here you're picking a report. It's a very specific report. This is, for example, where you pick your teacher contract. You pick the contract and pick, I want to do it for teachers and what year, and it just pushes out all your contracts. Some of you have a seniority report in this drop-down block. You have a variety of reports depending on what you are using. But if you're looking for just raw data, that is where this export information tool is so handy. So if you're just wondering, oh, I finally got all my evaluations in here. If you ever come in here and it's blank like that, look for that little green recycle. It'll bring them all back to you. Evaluation. And you can just go, is there anything in here about evaluations? I use contains, and I'll just put EVAL, and it'll tell me, oh, yeah, there's one there. Okay. Click and open it. That is all the data that is stored in your employee evaluation records. So, voila, you'll have access to the data right there. And you can export it to Excel and do whatever you want with it. And then if you decide on that export information, I need another field, or I need this, or I need that, or maybe something really custom, just shoot an email to our support team and let us know. The name of this export information is right here, ERM Employee Evaluation Information. Can we change this to include XYZ? Send that on over. Or maybe you want a total new custom thing, send it over to us. Customs typically have a small fee associated with them. We always quote you. Here's the events. If you were tracking an event of seniority custodian, just come here and get it. You can just filter right here for whatever the event is. So I've got this seniority date, so I'll just go seniority, and it's going to find that, and I can just export it out. So it depends on, obviously, the data. I only have one record with seniority date, bus drivers. But this export information is a tremendous way to quickly find events and traits and evaluation data. Now you can lastly use your search tool to find some of these. Let's be the last item I have, and I'll open it up for general questions for anything. So you can come in here and you can click this little guy, and you can find things like find people that have that seniority date teachers. Find it, okay? It's going to print it for you. Now what it prints is going to be our stock report unless you want something customized. Or if you want to find a specific event or a trait or endorsements or whatever you're looking for, you can use this search screen to find that information, and then just click to preview your. When you search, it'll show you the people at the bottom of the screen, and it'll give you a report function as well. So I'm not sure I'll get anybody here, but my little data, who knows? No. So, but you will, and you'll get this list button where you can then print your report. So you'll see the results of your search and a list button, so you can print that. So that's what I have for you today, other than to be sure to tell you it's December, so happy holidays. Hope you're getting a breather. I'm going to unmute and just see if there are any questions. Otherwise, you can close out of the webinar, and I wish you all a happy holiday. We'll stay on board for any last questions. Thank you for attending.